Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are across the globe. And welcome to the HFS webinar today, where we want to talk about the current sentiment of enterprises post the pandemic shock that we've all faced. Call out what's been the impact, and then most importantly, start unpeeling the recovery insights. So welcome everyone. My name is Saurabh. My name is Saurabh Gupta. I'm the Chief Research Officer here at HFS, leading our global research team to understand what's the impact of emerging technologies across businesses and across industries. And with me today, I have a couple of my colleagues, Phil and Melissa, and also two esteemed guests from Citizens Bank and Infosys. Why don't I ask our panelists today to quickly introduce themselves? Maybe starting with you, Phil. Phil, you're on mute, maybe?
Absolutely. Yeah, we all have many times a day. It's called mute. So good afternoon and good morning, everybody. My name's Phil Fesh, CEO, founder at HFS Research. Living and breathing this current world like everybody else, looking forward to sharing a lot of views and insights today and some great data that you're all going to see presented. And we'll have a wonderful report that we've written, which we'll be sharing with everybody in just a couple of days. So this is a great preview of what's to come, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Phil. Mohit?
Thank you, Saurabh. So Mohit Joshi, President at Infosys here in London. And I have to say it's such a pleasure being on an audio-only call because we've gotten used to so many of these video conferences. Look forward to some great insights. Thank you, for inviting me over here. And yeah, back to you, Saurabh.
Michael.
Hello, yes, Michael Rutledge. I'm the enterprise CIO for Citizens Bank here in Boston. I've been here now for a couple of years and was formerly one of the group CIOs at American Express. Thank you for the invite and looking forward to the discussion.
And last but not least, Melissa.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. Melissa O'Brien here, Research VP at HFS. I lead a lot of our research pertaining to customer experience and engagement, and looking forward to the discussion today. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So before we get started, just wanted to remind everyone that we want to make this as interactive as possible. So please, you'll find this small Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. So just type in your questions as we go through. We'll try and take in as many questions through the webinar, and we'll try and reserve 10-15 minutes at the end to address the questions. So make sure you use of this feature, and we want to make this as interactive as possible. So with that, let's get started. As the world changed practically overnight, with COVID-19, it created this state of upheaval and economic uncertainty, unlike anything that we've seen, in our lifetime, and hopefully we'll never see, going forward. And to be honest, it took several months for enterprises to really take stock of the pandemic's implication. And it's about now that we are starting to, place the bets on what we need to do from a medium to a long-term perspective, because thus far we were just fighting the crisis. And digital, while not new, we've been practically talking about digital for the last 10 years. And honestly, while most organizations have made efforts to understand, the impact of automation, new digital business models, public cloud, they could not effect internal change to fully exploit some of these technologies because there wasn't really a burning platform to change. But now overnight, COVID-19 has flipped that, decades old corporate mindset of resisting change to one of, actually demanding change. So given that backdrop, right, HFS, we partnered with Infosys and went ahead and surveyed 400 different executives across the global 2000 uh, enterprises to really understand how businesses can survive and, more importantly, thrive in this new pandemic economy, and start to develop what's going to be the outlook for business services and IT services in this current environment. As Phil mentioned, we'll be launching the full report in the next couple of days, but we really wanted to use this webinar to share some of the data, to give you a preview of some of the key findings, and most importantly, discuss what these findings mean, right, with our panel. So look, when we look at this crisis, we started to unpack this crisis in 4 different phases. The first phase was the crisis itself, right, and that was all about firefighting. That was all about establishing work from home, initiating your BCP plans, your disaster recovery plans. And then we quickly realized this is not one of the usual crises. And this is going to stay with us for forever, or for some time at least. And that's where we started to see stabilization of how do we start to make this on a long-term basis. Work from home couldn't have been a 3-week, 4-week strategy. Work from home is going to be a perennial strategy, for example. I think where we are now is somewhere at phase 3, phase 4. We are here now, where companies are starting to realize what's the true financial impact to them and to their customers, and are starting to figure out where should we focus and place our bets. And really importantly, figuring out what's the new playbook to attack opportunities. How do we unleash the organizational capital that we have to really survive this pandemic? So that's really what we wanted to discuss today. Not so much about the crisis itself, but what does the future hold for us, and how can we get prepared for that? But we can't deny that this was a crisis like no other crisis. Almost in our research, almost 70% of the respondents believe that this COVID-19 will have a bigger impact than the 2008 downturn. Practically, every business, big or small, around the globe, across all industries, had to figure out, how do you protect employees, deal with the crisis, ensure cash flow, all at the same time. This was not a usual crisis. Employees were definitely impacted, but supply chains were impacted in a big way. How do you become intimate with your customer? Customer service was impacted in a big way. The budgets and our estimates for costing were thrown out of the window. Time to market was impacted. So there was a huge impact. But I think we should pat our backs a little bit, because I think for something as unforeseen, most enterprises across the globe reacted admirably to this crisis. And there were three top priorities that emerged: employee safety, crisis management, and ensuring cash flow. And most enterprises did a fairly good job, at least according to our research. When it comes to employee safety, nearly 85% of the organizations were able to enable 50% or more employees to be working from home. Travel bans, canceling conferences, in-person meetings were the top 3 actions that everybody took. And now people are figuring out, how do you enable work from anywhere on a long-term basis? How do you provide healthcare associated with work from home? How do you sort of work with the government to do these? So I think employee safety has been a big concern. On business continuity and disaster recovery, we didn't see huge disruptions. Fewer than 10% of the enterprises in our survey reported major disruptions. So I think despite the global nature of the pandemic, which enforced lockdowns pretty much across multiple locations, and traditional BCPs were not able to support them, but still they were not flawless, but we didn't report huge major disruptions. And then, this is a time where we have to counterbalance speed and the need for transformation with cost, right? Cash is king right now because we are entering into a recessionary economy. And how do we find innovative ways to do more with less is going to be important. But I think as we look at it, one of the most interesting aspects of this has been to look at it by industry, right? And we see a tale of two cities starting to emerge. There's a group of industries which are more on the right hand side. They look at the public sector, banking, insurance, healthcare, life sciences, and the technology sector. They are seeing emerging opportunities as a result of this crisis. And then there is a set of industries which is more on the left-hand side, which has been, for them, survival is on the line, right? If you look at manufacturing, travel, hospitality, energy, uh, their survival is on the line. And actually, if you double click on this, on each of these sectors, there, by subsegments, there are very interesting variations as well, right? Because if you look at the retail sector, for example, while you see a surge in online retail, the brick and mortar retail is struggling to survive. So what's your business line mix, is very important to discuss as well, because this is not a secular trend. It varies by industry, it varies by geography, it varies by your business unit. And with that, I wanted to bring in our panel and get their reaction of what's been the impact of COVID-19 on businesses, and how do they see it varying by industries. And maybe I'll start with you, Mohit. If you manage a large portfolio of clients at Infosys, what are you seeing in your portfolio?
Sure, Saurabh. Thanks for that. Look, I think first of all, I must compliment you and the HFS team for a really comprehensive survey. I think it's one of the first of its kind that takes a close look at the post-pandemic dynamics. If I look at the chart where you'd shown the the industries and how they're impacted by this, just a few comments. I think that the sub-industry segmentation is quite important as well. For instance, high tech is the sector which I would say, in my opinion, has possibly done the best. If you look at business to consumer, if you look at enterprise software, these businesses have really thrived, and they're looking forward to the to a world where spending on tech, for instance, increases dramatically. If you look at the banking business, and Michael will, I'm sure, comment on this later, it's a little bit of a mixed picture, right? The investment banks, especially those with large trading desks, they have done well. While on the other hand, if you're mainly a high street lender, you're concerned about the your potential loan losses. You're concerned about the shape of the yield curve. If you look at insurance, and actually I was a bit surprised to see that insurers are so optimistic, because on the life insurance side, you're suddenly seeing a huge drop in the yield on your assets. And if you're a general insurer, you're concerned about whether you have to pay out on your business continuity policies. There's just the Bureau of Labor Statistics report just came out a few minutes ago. And if you look at it closely, it says that there has been a 2.5% drop in the premium paid for auto insurance this month. And this is on the, in terms of pricing drops. And this is on the back of a 3.5% drop in the, in the previous month, right? So obviously auto insurance is going to be stressed as well, because these are very significant pricing changes month on month. Retail has been impacted, there's no doubt about it, but equally some people who had a very active web presence, who had strong supply chains, they picked up very quickly. So I think this is a great representation of how industries have been impacted. We have to look at it as a next step at the sub-industry impact. The two final points I'll make is the one distinction that is very clear. is that larger companies have done better than small and medium enterprises. And that's because they had the technology infrastructure, they had the talent, and they had the processes to be resilient. So I think that is true pretty much globally, that large companies have outperformed the smaller companies. And you see this in the indexes as well, right? The
Yeah.
index of large companies has done better. And the final point is there is geography distribution as well. Countries like Germany, countries like, like Korea have outperformed countries where there has been a broader spread of the pandemic.
Yeah. So Phil, what's your take on the impact so far, and what are you seeing? How does that impact by industry?
Yeah, I think I'd echo Mohit's point that this has been a watershed moment for the technology industry. I feel personally blessed to be working in that industry because we've actually seen an increase this year in the growth of the space rather than this 8 to 10% decrease that was being forecasted earlier on. So I'm happy to be in that industry and not corporate real estate, for example. And I think it's been very different when you look at it, for example, with banking. I really look forward to hearing what Michael has to say on this as well. But if anything, the last mile of banking was getting that last 15 to 20% of consumers using digital, and now they're being forced to. So in many ways for banks, this has forced the model all the way to where they wanted it. Insurance, I agree, it's been flipped on its head. It's good for some, not good for others, because this makes it extra competitive. And then we can go through the industries and talk about how they're all impacted. But the bottom line is, this is a forced transformation. This is the first time in 3 or 4 decades that many industries, many businesses have been forced to actually make some changes to their processes because they've had to move to a work from anywhere, live from anywhere model. And this has forced them to look at how they run their customer processes right through to the back office. It's made them think about, well, we may want to try it this way, not that way, because it's not going to work effectively. It's forced them to look at the security more than ever. It's forced them to look at the agility, the impact, the speed, and all these types of things. But ultimately, what it's done is it's forced businesses to realize we have to design our processes in a way that's going to achieve the outcomes we want to achieve, and we need to move them into the cloud. Moving them into the cloud, which virtualizes the business, means that you have to automate. You have to actually instill automation as an attitude and a discipline. It's not a strategy. The strategy is data. How do we get the data we need to stay ahead of our competitors, to partner with the right firms, to make the right decisions? That is the strategy. We need the data. We need to get to it fast. And if we don't, we're going to not survive this one. And I think that's been the big shift. You go through almost every industry. It's all about how do we get the data and how do we get it fast? How do we access it rapidly, securely, in the way that we want? So it's about automating. Once you've automated, you can then look at AI to orchestrate those processes. So this is the start of a journey of everything we've talked about in the last decade, which didn't happen, is now happening. We've realized we haven't even moved 75% of what we needed into the cloud. That is now happening. Everything is happening at a speed which is breathtaking. The conversations with clients has become incredibly sophisticated. I mean, it's been night and day compared to some of the ones we were having 7, 8 months ago. You were on that call with me yesterday with about 38 C-suite finance sector, Saurabh, and it was almost motivating to hear how much they're thinking in advance, how they were getting out of their comfort zones, embracing the potential of technology. And I'll just finish up with the fact that digital fluency is now becoming the watchword in our industry. It's about non-tech people starting to really understand how technology can enable what they need. And it's about tech people realizing we need to actually be more business conversant and understand the context of what we're doing. And the cloud is a big driver in this because the cloud is standardizing things so much now. It's Googleized our world a little bit where things are so standard, it's forced the IT guys to step up and actually work with their business counterparts to figure out what is it you really need here, because this isn't about writing lines of code anymore so much. This is about actually delivering on a business need. So it's changed everything. It's not like 08 where I felt we all went back to the way things were. This is an inherent secular change. Most of this will ultimately be positive. Doesn't feel that way right now every day, but ultimately digital is all about faster, cheaper, smarter, more competitive. That's where we have to go. That's the way businesses is being done. And we have no choice now. There is nowhere to hide, as we're talking about in this study, and this is where we're going.
Yeah, no, Phil, so nowhere to hide, but you remain fairly bullish. So Michael, what are you seeing on the ground there in financial services and at Citizens Bank?
Yeah, I agree with many of the points Phil made. I think they were really good points. I think, our focus was on taking care of our customers. So banking is a critical service, and we stayed open throughout the pandemic. Our branches, we took care of the safety of our customers, and obviously safety of our employees was top of mind. And we've got a diversified portfolio. So as well as traditional retail banking, we have a mortgage business where it's really done really well recently. Capital markets has done really well. So once again, even within the banking industry, there's been ups and downs depending on the nature of the product. But I absolutely agree with Phil. The acceleration of digital adoption since COVID is really challenging certainly our business model. We've had to increase the pace of our digital transformation, and that means also increasing the speed of our data transformation. We've had to shift from sales and servicing in branches to sales and servicing online, and deliver efficiencies at a much faster pace. I think the good news is that Citizens Bank was already on that journey. Since I joined the bank, we launched a next generation technology strategy, and we've been accelerating our move to the cloud. We've accelerated our move to agile. We've built over 100 RESTful APIs, and in fact, those types of capabilities have really helped us service our customers better. So when the Small Business Administration announced the Payment Protection Program, within days we were able to develop a set of APIs linked to the SBA website and deliver loans to our customers. And I think if we hadn't have had that muscle, it would have been very hard to build out those capabilities that were built in the cloud so rapidly. And really it relies on top-notch talent, and that's really another key area that we've been really focused on. We've really hired a set of really top-notch engineering talent. We've initiated training programs for our existing employees and technical full-stack engineering programs, boot camps, if you like, and it's been really successful. So I think that's allowing us to service our customers better. As Phil says, time to market has become so critical. We have to compete with the fintechs, right? There's many digital banks out there, and we have to be able to compete in that space. So we've embarked on a massive digital transformation, and I'll talk about that a bit later on in the program.
Yeah, no, thanks, Michael. And I think the pivot to focus on customers even more is something that we've seen dramatically change over the last 3 or 4 months. But let me bring Melissa into this as well. Melissa, you talk to a lot of clients who are on the left-hand side of that picture, right? Retail, travel, hospitality. Tell us a little bit of what you are hearing.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to these comments. I think, the spaces that I follow, we've lumped into travel, hospitality, and logistics, and retail and CPG. So it's kind of interesting because there's a wide variation in sort of the recovery patterns in each of those sub segments, if you will. So, you've got travel and leisure, talking to those folks, they really are needing to transform, to reemerge versus CPG, transportation and logistics is a bit of modified business as usual. So, how do we figure out how to ramp up for surges, get more agile, get more flexible? So it's interesting to watch, but I think, in listening to Michael's comments, a lot of it comes down to company culture and how how open leadership and as well as from the bottom up are able to embrace change and do these kind of boot camps or whatever is necessary in order to make that pivot. But also to your point, Sarah, just that customer centricity. This has forced these organizations to think, what do my customers need? And how can I get closer to them in this sort of crisis situation? And moving forward, it's exposed a lot of lack of customer centricity, frankly. So I think that's something that comes down on a company by company basis and the culture, versus actual industry as such.
Yeah. No, thanks everyone. So I think let's bring our audience into this and maybe let's do this fun polling question. So I don't know if Andy, if you can bring this up, but it'll be great to hear from you all in terms of what do you think is going to happen to IT spending over the next 12 months. We've heard all our panelists talk about how important it is, but we also know we are entering into a recessionary economy, and how do you find the budget is going to be interesting. So would love to hear from you, if you don't mind just clicking on these options of, do you think it is going to increase significantly, somewhat, no change, decrease, or who knows, right? It's too early to say. And just click submit, and let's see what we hear from you, and then I'll share what we heard from our research, and then we'll get in Michael and Mohit and Phil and Melissa to weigh in. So let's see if we can see the results. Oh, look at that. So I think 70% of the audience here feels that it's going to increase slightly or significantly. And that's why I think Phil mentioned that we should be fortunate to be in this, or a lot of us feel fortunate to be in this sector right now. And I think this is so consistent with what we saw in our research, right? If you look at the research on the left-hand side, exactly over 70% of the respondents, when we talked to 400 different executives, also expected the overall spending on IT to increase. The big areas of spend are cybersecurity and cloud. Cybersecurity, for obvious reasons, as we move to a more remote environment, there are more threats that are going to come our way. And then cloud has, the race to the cloud has just been phenomenal over the last 3 or 4 months. And then a lot of conversation around just core IT modernization. How do we sort of take care of our legacy systems? But at the same time, some of the technologies like blockchain or some of the lesser known, lesser proved technology have taken a hit, right? There is no time for experimentation anymore. And people have to be laser focused on where do you get the ROI in this pandemic economy. So while we see an overall increase in IT spending, I think we'll also see a very laser sharp focus on where do you focus on. I think the other thing besides technology is also talent. That's the other area that we are finding huge increases or significant increases in terms of both focus and investments, right? If you look at our study, 9 out of 10 organizations realized that their approach to talent management has to change post-COVID. We are seeing increases in HR transformation and talent development budgets. We are seeing retraining of managers and leaders. We are seeing IT folks being trained on business, and business folks being, becoming more digital fluent. We are seeing an increase in, scaling collaboration capabilities. I think just like Michael talked about customer experience, I think employee experience is becoming front and center as well, because employee experience is the new customer experience. If you don't have your employees who have a good experience in this kind of a pandemic economy, you will never be able to have a customer experience that you desire, and we're seeing that happen. So I know Phil has been also doing a lot of research on what are the skills required to embrace this technology and business changes. And Phil, do you mind taking a couple of minutes to really talk about these 6 skills, especially the first two sort of really pique my interest on the appetite for change and digital fluency?
Yeah, so we get away from some of the traditional talent buckets that we're getting a little bit, the World Economic Forum stuff is getting a little bit jaded, especially in this market. But into some Maryland, absolutely critical right now. So we look at the mindsets that are tied to things like active learning, adaptability, so that's adjusting to changing situations, agility, which is about sensing and moving nimbly through change and ambiguity, and resilience, which is ability to effectively manage stress and time and your energy and attention. And we even spoke about this yesterday with the CFOs we were talking to, that we have to obviously support staff as much as we can, but there is a line somewhere in terms of we have to take responsibility ourselves to manage the situation a little bit in terms of just stress and focus, and just keeping abreast of where things are shifting, because they're not changing fast in terms of this work from home model. I think the most important thing is this digital fluency area, which is all about, I mentioned earlier, translating the understanding of digital tools to create new ways to serve customer needs, considering how digital technology is impacting every aspect of functional areas of our organization. Initiative, that's ability to navigate work and collaborate with other folks. It's leadership, it's taking the charge, it's willingness to lead, it's offering opinions and directions, it's motivating people. Self-development is critical. It's that accurate assessment of yourself and seeking out new knowledge and skills. That's so important. Vision, recognizing the long-term impact of your actions and decisions. Other things we felt were really important are like interaction, which involves things like empathy, managing, mentoring, customer orientation, problem solving, creative thinking and critical thinking, data centricity. Things like that are very important in terms of the processes behind finding solutions to difficult or complex objectives. Social influence is now more important than ever in terms of ability to articulate and persuade and negotiate. And then finally, values. People really taking values very, very seriously, having courage and humility and inclusion and responsibility and trust, an awareness of what's going on in the world right now. I mean, especially with, the tensions in the US, for example, with elections. And I even hear that some employers now are even asking questions around who
Oops, I think we lost Phil. I know UK has been having some connectivity issues. So while Phil joins us back, would love to get your thoughts. Maybe Mohit, if you can get us started with this on, what are some of the investment themes that you are seeing? You saw some of the results that came out of the study across people and technology. What are you seeing with your clients, and what's really Infosys also doing? I think both questions are equally interesting.
Sure, Saurabh. So I think, look, as you guys covered in detail in the deck, and Michael spoke about it, Phil and Melissa spoke about it. It's very clear that companies that came into this crisis prepared, and Michael spoke about the huge amount of effort that has gone on to build a new digital infrastructure, to train people in the new ways of working, including agile and DevOps, had a real head start when it came to the crisis. The talent management piece, having that learning infrastructure there was also very critical. Moving ahead, we see twin imperatives, right? We see two imperatives. The first is it's very clear that we will have some sort of a recessionary environment over the next 12 to 18 months, and therefore the cost piece becomes very important. And so the ability to bend the cost curve, through simplifying the landscape, through greater use of automation, through uh, you know uh, consolidating applications and business portfolios, I feel that is one key imperative, which is the long-term shape of the cost curve. The second piece is really around digital, right? And the digital piece is around experience, around data, around the API economy. I think APIs are going to be hugely important over the next 12 to 24 months. I think they will be pretty much what the cloud has been over the past couple of years, a continued investment in cybersecurity. So the twin imperatives, and these are not actually disjointed, right? They both go together. Digital also gives you a high degree of automation, and digital also gives you a high degree of personalization and insight, which customers are looking for. So I think these are the twin imperatives that will continue. If I look at at the Infosys portfolio, the recent partnership that we announced with Vanguard, I think is emblematic of the sort of deals that and the partnerships that we're looking to do, which is very large scale digital transformation partnerships, which are focused on completely changing the underlying legacy infrastructure, but are also very focused on enhancing client and sponsor experience. The last piece I'll mention from a focus perspective that we've seen, again, is something that you covered in your presentation, which is about changing the employee experience significantly. Historically, there has been a lot of focus on customer experience, but that has mostly been focused on the web channel and on the mobile app. We are also now seeing a focus on contact center transformation, and crucially on changing the technology that employees have to do their day-to-day jobs, because historically you relied on the fact that employees were logging into maybe 10 different applications to give customers the outcome they wanted. With the increase in volumes, with the fact that people are working from home, the need to build intuitive employee-facing applications has been critical. For us, one area of continuing investment has been our learning infrastructure. So historically, we've had a physical infrastructure of corporate universities across the world, including one in India. We're building the largest corporate university in the world in the US, but also strengthening our digital infrastructure. So our Lex solution now, serves 250,000 people in the company, but importantly, also serves 1 million of our employees, of our clients' employees, right? So I think these are the trends we'll see in the future. A focus on the cost curve, a focus on digital and the new, bringing in new revenue, a focus on growth, and finally changing the underlying infrastructure in the company with a focus on culture, a focus on talent development. Uh, these are the primary areas of focus for us and for our clients.
All right, Mohit. Michael, would love to hear, what are you talked a little bit about some of these in your opening remarks, but would love to hear a little bit more on what you and Citizens Bank are doing in terms of investment themes.
Yeah, I agree with Mohit that capturing efficiencies from digitization is going to be key, right? It's a big focus for us. How can we overall reduce our operating costs? So we're definitely looking at ways that we can automate, introducing chatbots, leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're doing things like streamlining our digital account opening, making it easier for our customers to set up new accounts online through their mobile devices, and leveraging, frankly, a lot of new data sources so that they don't have to enter as much information. We can preload as much of that information for identification and verification processes as possible. So big focus on that, big focus on leveraging data to do personalized offers and drive new customer acquisition. I think we embarked on an initiative called War on Paper, which once again is to really eliminate, if you think in the mortgage business, you think in the traditional account opening business, how much paper there is. And we're trying to, eliminate that as much as possible, streamlining a lot of those processes end to end, as Phil talked about. That customer journey is so important. You can't just change a web front end and think that's the end. You really got to look at that end-to-end process and see how you can make that more efficient, and we're definitely doing that. I think to build on a point that Mohit made as well, certainly, we are leveraging a lot of the education materials that are out there to improve the tech savviness of our whole team. And in fact, we launched a digital app to improve not just the tech savviness of the people in technologies, but the whole bank. So because in this new world, every employee has to be digitally savvy. So that's been a big area of focus for us.
Yeah, no, Michael, I really like that War on Paper. I think that's something that pretty much everybody has to now get on with. There's a race to the cloud and there's a war on paper. That's what's happening. But look, I think we've discussed the impact. We've discussed what the strategy and the big investment themes are. But I think this conversation is not complete till we discuss, what are the ways of working? What will the working arrangements look like in a few months or in a year? And I'd like Melissa, if you'd want to share your thoughts and share some of the findings that we've had from this research and others, to be honest, right, on what are you seeing on the ground, and then we'll bring in Phil, Mohit, and Michael back into a discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a point of data that we got from the study. And of course, I think a lot of organizations have been in wait and see mode, particularly as we await more information about, outbreak surges during the winter, and, there's optimistic info about vaccines and such. But when we asked about the outlook for working arrangements, as you can see, there's actually a good chunk that are bullish about getting right back into the office. But most are in some mid category here that are, waiting to see, we know we need to evolve our operations to support a hybrid model. We've got to monitor this. So, really it comes down to, we know that there's going to be a significant good chunk of folks that are working that are working remotely. So yeah, we can move on to the next one. Aligned to what we were talking about as far as investments, we're looking also at what the main challenges are in a remote environment. So this data is from a more intimate conversation, one of our roundtables we had about a month ago, a group of CX leaders. And this is them weighing in on what the biggest challenges had been throughout the pandemic. And as you can see, the top challenge by far was keeping customer engagement up. So I was, kind of surprised just that the overwhelming response to that, given all the challenges with security and regulatory compliance concerns. But this is a multi-layered problem, keeping customer engagement up, and Mohit and Michael were alluding to this also. So it overlaps with this managing volumes with less staff, but it's also, it's exposed a lot of broken processes and a lack of customer intimacy in many cases. And it's really created a burning platform for change to the approach to customer engagement. So, so how do you do that in a remote model? We can go to the next one. The key themes that have popped up in these conversations I've been having over the last several months. These are really the requirements to ensure that work from anywhere models work. And so one of the key areas, consider one of the most disrupted enterprise functions, the contact center, looking at it through that lens. The data that Sarb showed earlier about health and safety being first and foremost, I think that's 100% kind of the baseline and where we need to start. It actually for in-person offices meant a pretty big redesign of the centers and spacing and sanitization. But then you've also got this huge swath of folks from a remote standpoint, needing to check in as far as wellness goes. And we saw some digital solutions like apps for wellness check-ins and things like that to make sure that folks are at least, safe and healthy and okay. Of course, security became a huge prominent theme, and I think there were a few hard lessons learned. Mohit mentioned contact center transformation is finally got its burning platform. You had folks trying to convert old legacy investments into VPNs that are just simply not adequate. So kind of creating that layer of the infrastructure backbone is essential. And then of course, creating the cultural underbelly to support that. Now in the contact center, you're talking about folks that are used to having 3 or 4 huddles a day with their team in person, one-on-one coaching. They've got the supervisor walking back and forth on the floor and saying, hey, you need help with this. All that stuff, you can't replicate that in a remote environment, but how do you support the same type of interaction or the same type of, just making sure that employees have what they need to get their jobs done. You've seen organizations also much more formally tracking engagement with their employees to make sure that they're able to support the customer experience. And then the last couple of themes, I will say, work from home has been a big growth market from a delivery standpoint, in particular in North America and growing in Europe and even in APAC for contact center. And it was never a play that was about cost reduction. It was always about flexibility and agility, as well as talent and the ability to find talent. So when you've got surges, sort of leaps and troughs in clients in customer calls, we see this all the time in the retail sector, just, for holiday surges and things like that. This is where, you have to lean on some of those workforce management and some of that, as kind of a baseline to make sure that you're able to keep that customer engagement going. And then of course, automation, which can also augment the employee's job. Michael mentioned chatbots. We look at more intelligent chatbots like digital associates that can help not just manage volumes, but also, get rid of some of those self-service issues and some of the broken processes that this kind of has exposed. So I think bottom line, these lessons learned, that these principles are going to guide companies moving forward as they kind of reboot and look to do this remotely. And, now they're even looking at all this stuff when hiring folks. So, how do we create this employee engagement remotely from the start? And I think as this evolves, it becomes more of the fabric, of a company vision rather than, an afterthought and a reaction to crisis. So I'll end there and pass back to you, Sarb.
Yeah, no, thanks, Melissa. I think it's very interesting on one angle that, we are moving into a completely different working arrangement than we've been used to for all our adult lives. And on the other hand, it's, as you mentioned, it's a multi-layered problem. I think the other thing that and this is where we love to bring, the audience into this, is what is the Goldilocks number? What's the right number between the mix of, remote working and office working? Is it almost fully remote? And I'm saying, in let's say 6 months down the line, right? What's the right split? I don't think we've come to a conclusion on this, but would love to hear your thoughts on this. Is it fully remote? Is it 75-25, more remote, less office? Is it 50-50? Is it 25-75? Is it almost fully back to normal like we were, or it's just hard to say. Would love to see some reactions to this. And while we are seeing this poll come through, actually would love to hear Michael, your thoughts, and what are you seeing, and how are you planning for the working arrangements going forward?
Yeah, I think we've been tremendously successful as a IT organization working from home, right? It hasn't. I don't think we've skipped a beat really in over the last 6 months in people working virtually for the most part. But ultimately, when conditions return to normal, and of course that word normal is a big question mark. I do think there are still tremendous advantages of people being co-located in the same office, working together, especially as you look at things like agile and design thinking sessions and really co-creation, moving at speed, whiteboarding. Clearly there are tools. There's whiteboarding technology, there's collaboration tools, and obviously use of video collaboration. But I still think that to really achieve the full levels of productivity that we've seen as companies have moved to agile delivery, you'll never get to that point of that full level of productivity without being in the same locations. And we've diversified our locations, but we still have focused sort of 5 hubs across the country where we're growing tech talent, and I see that will continue. But as you said, I absolutely agree with all the comments. Employee safety is absolutely top of mind, and we've got about 25% of the folks back in the office right now. And we'll wait and see, and probably into next year before we increase that, because health and safety is the number one priority.
Yeah. So let's see if we have the results of the polling question. These were the IT ones. Let's see if we got to some sort of a Goldilocks number. But while we get there, and as you can see, there's no one answer. Mohit, would love to get your reaction to this, right? This is what we've seen, through and through again, that while there is an appetite, big appetite to, work from anywhere, we just don't know what's it going to look like.
Sure. So I think, look, this survey, this online poll that you've taken reflects the surveys that we've done as well. We did a poll of 3,000 plus of our clients. And what we found is more than 85% of them thought that, you would see greater than 60% work from home in the future. But I think there is a recency effect over here. Obviously, people assume that the future will be the same as things are now. And so that's one caveat. I think the second thing is that a hybrid workspace is much harder to run than a fully remote workspace, right? And while you do have answers like a Zoom or like, Microsoft Teams or the in-house tools we've created, for instance, like Meridian for a fully remote workforce, there are no easy answers for a hybrid workforce. So I agree with Michael. I suspect that we will start see businesses maybe in 6 months. I suspect that because we won't have the vaccine being fully deployed, for the next 6 months, we will see work being pretty much the way it is today. After that, it will start to creep up. And I think that we will get back to, maybe 60, 70% plus work from office levels over time. The number of people working from home will still be higher than today, but I don't think it will be the fully remote working either. But this is one of those things where it's hard to say. Like Zoom, if somebody comes up with an awesome solution for a hybrid workspace, I suspect we could see larger work from home numbers.
Yeah. So Phil, I know you've, I don't know if you're back, but would love to get your thoughts on this whole debate, work from home, remote, hybrid.
Well, hopefully the UK will improve its internet infrastructure when we fully get to work at home, because they're doing a little lockdown right now and it's having multiple problems for anybody. But I do believe that we'll get back to some work in office, because it is important. It's critical for training folks. I think many of us appreciate getting out the office and traveling as much in general when we get back to normal, or whatever normal looks like. in general, because we're now used to using video technology. We don't have to travel to every meeting. I'm also seeing, for example, major outsourcing transitions done using Microsoft Teams and Slack and applications like that. We're learning to use technology to do things faster, cheaper, more effectively than ever before. So I think we'll travel less. I do think office will come back and we'll have a sort of maybe 25 to 50% time allocation for most of us. I've been fortunate that we have kept one of our offices open in the UK, and a few of us do go in there 1 or 2 days a week when it's just good to stare at some people and realize that, you know, humanity does still exist. So we'll go back a little bit like we were before, but not a hell of a lot. That's what I think is gonna transpire.
Yeah, look, I think this has been a fantastic discussion, and I think the way that I look at this is, you know, this is an opportunity for us to do what we always knew we had to do, because honestly, none of these things that we've discussed are new. You know, cloud is not new, talent management is not new, customer experience, employee experience, none of these things are new. It's just that now we've realized there is no way to hide behind it. You know, we've got to do it. We always knew we had to do it, but you know, there were ways to run around in circles and not do it. And I think that's the bottom line for me, as we've done this research, as we've been thinking through this, is you know, just do what you know you had to do forever. And would love to get, you know, one sort of takeaway from our panelists on, you know, if you were to advise, you know, one thing or two things based on our discussion today, what is it that you would advise enterprises? You know, what's the one or two takeaways that they should have from this crisis, and as they look at, you know, 6 months, 12 months down the line? And maybe I'll start with you, Michael.
I think you've got to keep the customer lens, continue to really fundamentally keep the customer lens in mind, right? So how can we truly continue to improve the customer experience? So I think, as we talked about earlier, you know, this has just changed the way that our customers work as well, right? That, you know, customers, not as many customers are going into branches. They're doing much more things at home. Our commercial sales force is talking to customers over the phone and over WebEx, and the customers are getting more used to that type of environment. So I think, you know, keeping that in mind is going to be critical. And how do we continue to improve the customer experience? And once again, that goes back to doubling down on our digital transformation. How can we make it easier for our customers to do business with us? How can we do, you know, we talked about chatbots, but there's also robo services that we can do so people can self-serve and find out more about wealth management or mortgage or banking. So how do we continue to do those type of things that, frankly, people can do from anywhere they are, right? So I think it's really accelerating that journey. As many of you have said, we were already on that journey, right? We were already moving to that, but now this has really forced us to really accelerate that journey. And it means everything that we've talked about on this call, moving to the cloud faster so that we can press a button and that, you know, the environments are there. They're already pre-built in a box, unleashing our engineers so they can start to code straight away, automating testing, automating the DevSecOps pipeline so we can do releases much, much more quickly. You know, we want to be releasing code in weeks, not months, right? So I think that's where fundamentally it's going to accelerate a lot of that journey that we'd already started.
Yeah, so double clicking on digital to drive better customer experience. maybe I go to Melissa. We have 3 M's here, which I just realized, by the way, Mohit, Melissa, and Michael. So let me go to the second M, Melissa. And what's your takeaway, Melissa?
Sure. Yeah, Michael, I agree wholeheartedly with your comments. If there's one thing I could add to it, and also just listening to Phil talk about, the skills, the new skills required, I think this is a good opportunity for all organizations now to, not just reevaluate the skills and what's required, and the talent, but also it's time to get serious about diversity, and the work from home capability has actually opened a lot of doors, I think, for us to explore, folks that we wouldn't necessarily have been able to hire in the past, in many cases and in many geographies, potentially, disenfranchised groups that didn't have the economic opportunity because they couldn't get into an office, or for whatever, domestic reasons that, that folks couldn't actually commute. So I think that this is an enormous opportunity also to just kind of reevaluate. And as we talk about unleashing people, let's get some more voices in our organizations, and it will all point us in a better direction to get more diversity in the loop.
Yeah, that's a great point, Melissa. Mohit, what are you advising your clients?
Sure. So I think, look, both Melissa and Michael have made extremely good points. Where I would add is that I feel that there's a huge amount of appetite in the boardrooms of large companies, which wasn't there earlier, to look at large tech-driven transformations. Historically, one of the stumbling blocks has been that the boardroom really doesn't understand technology, and therefore they were reluctant to sign off very large sums that were required to make these multi-year transformations possible. I think that appetite is there. And as technology leaders, we should be using these to drive the agenda of our companies for holistic transformations that give us a lower long-term cost base, huge processing efficiencies, but also dramatically transform the experience for clients and for employees. I think the opportunity is there, and I see this on a daily basis, that CIOs, CEOs, and CEOs of very large companies are putting together these plans, because this is the opportunity when these significant initiatives are going to get a green signal.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Phil, do you want to wrap this for us?
Yeah, no, it's been a rich conversation and a mature conversation, and it really sort of rings home to me how far we've moved in 8 months. Is it? I mean, it's been like 10 years. It feels like since we hit this lockdown. In fact, even hearing you talk about the pandemic shock and going through the whole transition, that feels like an age ago as well. I feel like we're at a time where leadership is the most important thing that we have to focus on. As leaders, we need to motivate people. We need to accept the reality of the situation. There is hope that vaccines are in advanced stages of development, and I'm fortunate enough to have people who are in the virology space around me in my personal life, so I know what's going on there, and it is positive. We will eventually move out of this, and it will take a little longer than we hope, but it will get there. And the key right now is
Yeah, so I think we lost Phil again, but I think I agree with Phil. This seems like it's been the biggest year of our life, right?
Exciting time. So
yeah, no, thanks, Phil. I think we lost you in a little bit, but I was just summarizing that we completely agree. This seems to be one of the longest years of our lives, but we'll get through it. Recessions do end, and never waste a crisis. This is a time to do things that we always knew we had to do, but were never able to do it. This is the time to make the change, and there's nowhere to hide. So I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Mohit, Michael, Melissa, and Phil for sharing your thoughts. And thank you for all of you to listen in. And as we mentioned earlier, this report is going to be published soon. We wanted to give you a sneak peek into this. So So watch out and stay safe and have fun in your homes. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Saurabh, and thank you all.